Evening and welcome to Zero XP Studio. I am Zero XP Dev. Welcome back to our weekly dev update on Star Jump Warp Crisis and our live dev. So let's pull up the game here and show you what we've got going on. Now, theoretically, everything should be working. It was as of yesterday. So first of all, we've got our enemies are doing damage to us. So these ones. So one thing you'll see. Actually, let me make sure. Yeah, our shields are regenerating. Cool. So they don't do the full damage to the shields, but they don't. It's not all of it. So what we've got going on is like they do 80% damage to the shield, and if there's no shields, well then they do all the damage to the health. Now, next thing. Hold on. Why was XP building up then? We shouldn't have had any XP yet. Just from crashing into them. Yeah, no, we're not getting any XP. Yeah, there we go. It's hitting some off screen or whatever. Okay, so we've got upgrades. We've got a menu that's working. We can switch between it. And then when we apply one, so let's say, well, this one's not going to take much effect at the moment because, well, it's increased our max health, but we don't have any way of replenishing our health yet. Our shields regenerate, but we need to have enemies like drop something like repair packages or something like that, parts and all that can be used to repair. We've got greedy rounds, increase XP gain by 25%. So normally these enemies give 25 XP. So, but you'll see if we kill one. Whoa, we got a lot of XP then. There's been quite a few bullets on screen. We'll go the thrusters as well. Yeah, so you see we're not going up by 25 now, like we're getting percentages of that. We'll show our health. So our health, max health goes up to 125. Now we increased our, one of the upgrades there was increase on the speed, which, yeah, this ship normally goes 400, but now we can go 460. What else have we got? Oh, the shield capacitor. So if we take that one in, let's knock our shields down a bit. Well, don't die. So you'll see our shields, when they start recharging, they start recharging a lot faster. What else have we got? Thrusters, rapid fire rounds. Yeah, so we can shoot faster. I mean, yeah, we're really building up XP here fast. A lot of enemies on the screen though, so we're definitely gonna have to fine-tune like those XP counts. I mean, 25 XP for them is a lot. That was more for testing. I think they're gonna give like 5 XP or something like that, 10 XP. Yeah, we'll see. And then something like that increase, it's not going to be increased by 25%, it's going to be increased by 5%. So I got these large numbers purely for test purposes at the moment. But yeah, all that's working. We get multiple level ups. Oh, what's going on here? Must be a shitload there. That's all there, just a lot happening. Why aren't they dying? All right, we've got something going on there. Something's happening with our health. Let me grab a few of those health upgrades and see what's happening. Oh, wait. No, something... Our health went to 0. Are we not dying? And then that caused a problem. Something's going on there. Okay. So we need to fix something that's happening with our health. ABJ player. Have we not got just when we die? No, we don't. Okay. All right, so we go over to a zoomed in screen. This one's going to be easy, so current health is equal or less than 0. What do we do? Let's destroy. And then on destroy. We'll restart game. Let's see what happens. All right. And then we should be able to start fresh. Make sure nothing's broken. All right, cool. Make sure our shields are regenerating. All right. Okay, so what do we want to do next? I mean, now we pretty much just build it out. So it's adding more enemies, adding the different starships, adding a bit more weapons. Yeah. Let's add another enemy first, and we'll see if we can get an enemy that's shooting. So I'm gonna pull up create a new sprite. Bear with me a second. Let's pull that in here. Put that up there. Okay. What do we want? Assets. Whoops. I mean, to be honest, I'd like those ones. All right. Okay, hold on. I'd had the process of this. What are we doing? That's all that there. All that one over here. So it's all right. So it's going to be a 64 by 64. If I go drag that in, ah, hold on. Edit contents. Here we go. And then should be able to come back here. And yeah, it looks pretty cool. All right, so file, export as, export. Yeah, I'm just going to do SPR enemy first because what I want to do. Import. Oops. Hold on. Rename that one to put that on there. Oh, can we want to rotate it. Save, come back. File, export as export. Save, yes. All right, now. Import Assets, prototype, SPR, enemy 1. Yes. Do we want to make it a little bit smaller? I mean, he sort of is smaller than him already. All right, now if we go to our enemy manager, hold on. So enemy 1. Yes, that's right. So let's duplicate that. Give me 2 spawn. Yeah, so nothing of them is going to change. All right, duplicate that. Enemy 2. Enemy 2. All right, so let's make him 20. He can go 400. And we'll make him a little slower. Let's turn down these XP rewards as well. Okay. Back to the level manager again there. Alright, so rule map 1, enemy spawn object, enemy 1 spawn. Time elapsed, trigger time 0. Every 2 seconds. How many does it spawn? We'll set those as the standard. Enemy 2 spawn. Now, technically that should spawn 2 different enemy types now. So first we're going to have the first little enemies. All right. Now we should start getting 2 different sets of enemies. Wait, where's the other ones? Oh, there's one there. Ah, that okay, hold on. I know why. Enemy 2 spawn. When it's full, it needs to change to enemy 2. Why is his what's the collision? Automatic precise. There we go. Collision, automatic precise. That should be better. I wasn't even paying attention. I was looking at something else. Yep, they're all good. Okay, cool. All right, so now we want to change how that one's moving. All right, so this is something new for me. So we're going to do some research. So we drag that there. All right, so while we jump into YouTube first to start our research, first thing is we've got, well, it's 2 weeks ago, but we've got a new video up on the YouTube channel from our stream a couple of weeks ago. Hopefully in the next day or two, I'll get the last week's stream and tonight's stream up. And then, all right, so what are we going to do? So, hold on, let's pull up the Game Maker tutorials as well. They're like potentially in here because pretty sure there was some enemy stuff in that. Screen shake, that'll be good. We're gonna want parallax scrolling for our backgrounds. Be possibly in that too. Okay, so let's start here. Okay. Enemy factions.
Hey everyone, welcome back. In the next few videos, we're going to be creating enemy ships. And these I think will be quite important and exciting videos because we're going to be going over a lot of planning and conceptual setup before we dive into the code. And hopefully by the end of it, I can show you how important this can be to ensure that we develop in a way that reduces the amount of work overall so that we can reuse code and make a system flexible enough to handle additions and changes in the future. So say if you wanted to add more enemy types or different types of bullets in the future, the system will allow you to do it. So in this first video, we're going to be going over the conceptual planning and setup, and then we'll move on to coding in the later videos. So let's have a think about what we've already programmed into the game. At the moment, we have a player ship, asteroids, and bullets. The player ship can create bullets which travel at a fixed speed and direction, and those bullets can collide with asteroids and destroy them, and also themselves. The ship can also collide with the asteroids, which will destroy the ship. So that's how all of our different objects are interacting with each other and colliding. So now we're
Pretty much
planning
what
on
I've got.
introducing 3 enemy ships, and I've called these Raiders, Hunters, and Brutes. Now, in essence, these are all going to kind of act in similar ways, although they'll have slightly different variables and behavior. But essentially, we want all enemy ships to be hurt by the player's bullets. We want all of the enemies to create bullets which can hurt the player. And we don't really want enemies to be able to destroy each other. Or maybe you do, but in this game, we're going to make it so that ships that are part of the same faction aren't going to hurt each other. So let's have a look first at the different enemies' properties. The raider ships are going to be the kind of grunts of my enemy faction. So they're going to be moving in a random direction when they're first created until the player gets close enough to them. When the player gets close, they're going to turn to face the player and shoot at them, although they'll continue to move in their set direction. Fairly simple behavior for those. Now, the hunters are slightly different. Like the raiders, they're going to move in a random direction when they're first created, and when the player gets close enough to them, they are going to turn and kind of duck and weave and chase the player until the player leaves their detection radius. They are also going to periodically shoot bullets at the player, and those bullets will be a little bit faster than the raiders' bullets. So they're a little bit more dangerous. And finally, the brutes, again, they will move in a random direction, although I'm going to make them move at a slower speed than the others. When the player gets close enough to the brutes are going to, again, turn to the player and give chase. And they're going to pick up speed as they chase the player. So they're going to move closer and closer. They're not actually going to shoot. Their goal is to kind of collide with the player and destroy their ship that way. And I'm going to make the brutes a bit tougher than the raiders and the hunters. I'm going to give them 5 HP because they are kind of surrounded by shields and it's a bit tougher to kill them. So you can see there's a lot of similar properties to the ships, but they do have their differences. So they're all going to have a kind of direction and speed that they move at when they're first created. They all have a kind of detection radius. And finally, where they're kind of most similar is how they interact with the other objects. So like I said, if they create bullets, those are going to harm the player. They're not going to harm each other. They can take damage from the player's bullets, and they can also damage the player by running into them and destroying their ship. Now, if there's 3 different enemy objects, that's a lot more new collisions that we have to add, for example, to the player's bullet. And if we do it that way, it also means that we're going to be repeating a lot of code. But really, all of the collisions are going to kind of result in the
Parent
same
objects.
thing. All of the enemy ships are going to lose health or be
We've already got
destroyed
that
when
set
a
up.
bullet hits them. So, instead of putting in 3 different collision events, it would be a lot easier if we could just have 1. And the way that we can do this is have a parent object for the enemies, a parent ship object, that all of the enemies inherit from. So in GameMaker, we can have parent objects that can set certain properties like variables. They can even have code and behavior, but it means that all of their children objects can be referred to as a member of their parent, kind of. If I check for a collision with the parent ship, that's going to check for a collision with all of the enemy types. So that way, I only need 1 event. It'll also allow us to have a place to set up the shared properties of the ships. So now that's kind of reduced the number of interactions that we need to put in. So we have now a ship that can create a bullet. That bullet can either hit an asteroid or hit the enemy. If it hits the enemy, it's going to take away one of the enemy's health and perhaps destroy it. If it hits an ally, then I don't want it to damage the ship. Similarly, the enemy can create an enemy bullet, basically, that does the same thing but in reverse. So perhaps they can also hit asteroids, they can hit the player and damage the player, but I don't want it to damage the enemy ships. But even now we can see that these two bullet objects are kind of doing the same thing. They're just acting differently depending on who created them and who they're hitting. So maybe we don't really need two different objects for the bullets. Maybe we can do this all in one. And instead we can set up a faction system where all the objects belong to a certain faction. So the ship, and perhaps if we create allies for the ship, can belong to an ally faction, and when they create a bullet, we can set the bullet's alignment to the allies. On the flip side, we can make the parent of the enemy ship belong
we don't
to
need that though,
the
because
enemy faction. And perhaps later on we could
we're
even
gonna have different bullets,
debris or
different
floating
weapons.
objects or floating guns or even structures that can belong to different factions. And exactly like how we did for the enemy ship, we can accomplish this by having a parent ally object, which all of our allied objects can be a child of, and all of the enemy objects can be a child of the enemy faction object. And this should be a really flexible system because we could even potentially introduce more factions in the future. We could have, for example, a neutral faction, and you could build some really interesting missions around perhaps a group of ships or a group of aliens that are kind of friendly or at least won't attack. Hey everyone, welcome back. So we had just gone over the conceptual planning for our enemy factions, and now we're going to jump into the coding. So first of all, I'm just going to drag in the sprites that we'll be using for this section of the enemy ships. So I'm going to drag these three in here. And let's just go ahead and fix up their origins and collisions. So let's set their origin to the middle center and a collision mask. For these, I think I'm going to make them diamonds because they're a diamond shape. And you might be wondering why I have multiple frames for this one. It's actually not to animate it, it's to represent kind of its different stages of health. So this one is when it has like full shields and losing health down to none. And you'll also notice that when you import it, it automatically kind of chopped up the images into 5, and that's because I named it with an underscore strip 5, and GameMaker is set up so that if you do that, it will chop up the image automatically for you into whatever number of frames you put here. It'll just do it evenly. So that can be really handy if you're importing a lot of sprites at once. And let's move on to the other ones. So for the hunter, middle center, I might actually make this one an ellipse just so it kind of covers more ground. And for the raider, we'll make it middle center. Let's keep that one as a rectangle and we'll just make it a little bit smaller. Cool, so something like that. All right. So we're done with the sprites. Now let's go and set up our object hierarchies. So first of all, I'm actually going to make an object called obj faction. And this one is kind of like the big grandparent at the top of a string faction. So we might
your movement strategies.
So asteroid, and we'll do obj and the brute. And brute here in the game, their child will be up here. And if we click on the variable definitions, overwrite this and make it red. And we'll change this one to enemy. And we can actually just leave collision to the asteroid, and then we could do the same for our enemy and ally objects, but that's just going to get messy very quickly. So instead of that, I'm going to actually cut all of this out and let the objects handle their own damage events. So they're all going to have an abstracted event where they can control how they take damage. So let's cut all of the code that was to do with taking damage for the asteroid. So we can see right here, the only kind of two things that we want to keep, I think, is just the destroy event for the bullet. And then everything else, we're going to hold shift and then click on the bottom one. We're going to cut all of this out. So we're leaving only this, and we're going to come along to the asteroid objects. Whoops. Here, and I'm going to add a user event, and it can be any of these. Let's just use one. And all of our faction objects are going to have an event like this. So this is the take damage event. So let's paste the user going to set up. I want it to be checking if it's colliding with something that it is its top of objects, and in that case, not position is what we're going to be checking. So this function gets across. So we'll change this to XXYY and we'll put in our X and Y. Check if... Alright, good. So now I think we're done with the... So that's what it will be doing when it takes health. It'll just be destroying itself. Alright, now I also want to look at this event because this was a specific collision with the... So it does all of this stuff when it uses one place. So we can see that the player's color is correct, so it's got the ally color, but if we go ahead and shoot, we actually just destroy ourselves. And remember, of course, that's because we haven't set the bullets faction variable up to the going to, and we're going to make. So now we'll just applying this to a new bullet. We can set it to this for faction. And so the player, when we pasting code, so you want to move. Alright, so I think we're done for this tutorial. We've set up the ships and the asteroids, and in the next one we'll be set. Hey everyone, welcome back. I set a base speed for these, so I'll just set 2. We might make some of them faster, but this will do us for now. And finally, I want to also set its rotation of the sprite to match whatever direction that is, so that it's facing the direction that it's going. So image angle, we set to the direction. And finally, I'm also going to add an HP variable. I'm using HP just so that we're not using the built-in variable health. I'm just going to use my own one. So we'll set this to 1 for now because a lot of them will just have 1 health, but for the brute, for example, I might make that one have more health. Alright, so another thing we know that all of the enemies are going to do is have some kind of destroy event. Perhaps we can get them to create some debris. So I'm going to head over to the asteroid and I might just copy its destroy event. So down here we had this repeat loop where we just created 10 of the debris objects. I'm just going to highlight those, copy them, and head back to the parent enemy and paste that in. And I'll also get it to play a sound effect. So sound, and we'll do the die audio. Let's also have the enemies add to the score when they are killed by the player, and we can also maybe set some variation in the score, so perhaps like the raider can add less than the brutes or the hunters to reflect kind of the difficulty levels of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a switch statement, and depending on what kind of object it is, we are going to add different things to the score, like I said. Now, I could put this in their own respective destroy events, but for now, their code is so similar that I'm just going to leave it in this one. If it was much more complicated, I would maybe break it up, but for now, I think this is a little bit simpler. So what we're switching is called the object index. So this is what object it is. So is it a brute, a raider, or a hunter? So in the case that it's obj raider, then we are going to add to the score. But we do want to apply this to the game object because that was keeping our score. And I might just copy this and paste it a couple more times. I'll change this to obj hunter and brute. And I'll set the hunters one to 30 and maybe 50 for the brute. All right, cool. So that is the destroy code set up for the enemy. Now, just like the player and the asteroid, I'm also going to add a take damage user event. So you remember user event 1 was our taking damage one. And so remember, we just set up this HP variable and we're going to treat it like we don't know how much HP these have currently. They might have 1, they might have 5. So what we're just first going to do is take away some HP. So I'm going to subtract -1 from HP relative to what it's currently equal to. And then we're going to check if, cool, so next thing I'm going to add is, so now all of our enemies will be inheriting all. all of this code, and we can go ahead and customize. Them a little bit. So I mentioned that I wanted to change a few of these variables in the brute. I think the raider and the hunter will keep most of these, but let's head over to obj brute. And we can see right here all of these kind of ghost events showing that it is inheriting from its parent. What we're going to do is overwrite this, so we're going to override the event, but we still want to run the code from the parent. At the moment, what we just did means it kind of doesn't inherit from the parent, as you can see by this little cross. So we have to remember to drag in the call parent event if we still want it to run the parent's event. So once it does that, we are just going to tweak a couple of the variables. So I'm going to set its speed equal to 1 instead of 2, so it's going to be a little bit slower than the other ones. I'm also going to set its HP to 5 instead of 1 if you hover the brute stop and a little bit. So I think our enemies. So this one, the object that it's going to create, and then the number of objects to create. And we can use this same one to create our enemies. Just 5 of those, and obj see if we shoot them. We can also see that the brute is moving a lot slower, and it takes hopefully multiple hits to destroy the brute. Yes. Alright, cool. So that is it for our enemies and our setup, but now I want to change their individual behavior. So if we just come back to the parent enemy, what I'm going to do is get these 3 to respond to the player when we get within their range. So we're kind of going to be checking how far away we are from the player, and if we are within a certain radius, kind of like our detection radius, then we're going to change our behavior. So for example, we're just heading in one straight direction at the moment. Maybe we'll give chase to the player or shoot at them. So let's do the raider first, because I think that would be, this one will be the simplest behavior. So we're going to hop into its step event, and just as before, we have to be careful that we do want to inherit this code to wrap around the room. So when we override, let's also drag in call parent. We need to be able to tell how far away we are from the player. So first of all, we're going to use a function call, because there isn't an action block for this one, but it is a function called point distance. So it's another of these handy point functions, and we can check how far away we are. So x1, y1 is from another point, x2, y2. So we need 4 arguments. The first 2, so the first point that we're checking is just our location, so we can do x, y. And then the other point that we're checking is just the ship. So we're going to go obj ship.x and obj ship.y. And then we want to save that into a temporary variable so we can go and check it in a second. And let's just save that in a temporary variable called dist. Now, before we move on from here, we have to again be careful that because we are specifically referencing a instance that might not be existing. So remember, when the ship dies and it doesn't exist in the room, there's a few seconds before the room restarts, and in that time a raider might be moving past and trying to detect its distance from the ship, only the ship won't exist and we'll get an error. So we have to check if that instance actually exists. So I'm just going to type in exist and we'll check right here before we actually point to it if obj ship exists. Then we'll do that. And actually, if it doesn't, what I'm going to do is just get it to exit the code block. So I'm going to tick not. So if the ship does not exist, we won't perform any of the next code. All right. So now we just need to check. We have the distance, but we need to check if it is less than a certain distance. So this can be any number that you want, so maybe 250. So that's half the camera size. So if it's less than that, then we know that the player is quite close to the radar and we might want to change our behavior. And now, for the radar, what we're going to do is just, if the player is within its detection radius, we're going to get the radar to look at the player. So we need to get the direction kind of from the radar to the player, and we're going to shoot at it in that direction. So we need that direction, and it's going to involve, again, another function block. And this one is point direction. So we're going to get the direction from one point to another. There's 4 arguments. So point 1, again, it's going to be the same as this. So x, y. We already know that the ship does exist because of this check right here. If it didn't, we would be exiting and we wouldn't be able to run this. And we'll save that into a temporary variable called dir. So now we have the direction from us to the player. Now we can turn to actually look at the player. So let's do that. We're going to change our rotation. We could do this via just the variable change, or we can pull in the set instance rotation block. So just like that. No, we don't want it to be relative. This would be an absolute angle that we're turning to. And now what I'll do is, if the player goes back outside of our range, I might turn back to face the angle that we're actually moving in. Because remember, we haven't changed our direction, we've just changed where we're facing. So again, if this isn't less than 250, we need an else statement. So if this is not the case, then we will set instance rotation, I'm just going to copy that, back to our actual direction. So let's just give that a test and see if that
direction. Direction. Get rid of that one. switch these screens back while I'm working down here now. Play direction. I wonder, what if we went, how will that work? Does it, we go random range between, say, 0 and 5, relative. Okay, let's see if this works. Pardon me. Whoops. I need to change that down. Okay, so it needs to be -5 to 5. Gives them some variance. And then let's say 300. See what happens there. Come on, buddy, come here. Yeah, sweet. All right, so we've got them added and they're moving differently. Then we can, yeah, okay. All right. Let's see what's happening there. We can then, like, we could have them move in and out and in and out depending on the distance. So, um, what's pretty much have them shoot the same as the way the player does. Let's take a short break. And we'll come back and see about adding some weapons for that enemy to fire. All right. I need to fix that transition up. That shouldn't be a stinger transition there. All right, so yeah, I'll be back in 10 minutes. We'll come back and we'll add some weapon fire for the second enemy type, and then there's one other thing I want to look at as well, but we'll see what time we've got. So don't go anywhere. I'm Zero XP Dev. You're watching Zero XP Studio while we're making Star Jump Warp Crisis. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Okay, and welcome back to Zero XP Studio. I'm Zero XP Dev. we're in the process of building our first game, Star Jump Warp Crisis. Now we've just added a second enemy type, and we're going to look at adding some weapon fire for it. So we're going to come up to our player. All right. There'll be an alarm.
I am the Game Fairy. Tell me your...
Alarms in GameMaker are great, but you may have come across some limitations. For example, you have to use them with objects, which can only have 12 of them, and they are dependent on your game's frame rate. Enter time sources. Create a time source from anywhere like a script using this GML function or action. After specifying its parent time source, give it a length which can be in frames or in seconds. If this is in frames, then the time source will be dependent on your game's frame rate, but if it's in seconds, then it will not be tied to your game's frame rate, meaning a 1 second time source will run for exactly 1 second, no matter how fast or slow your game is performing. Now give your time source a function which is called when the time source expires. Specify an array with the arguments that you want to pass into that function. In my function, I'll create an instance of an object at the mouse's position just to test this time source. And then to actually start your time source, you have to run this function or action on your time source variable.
Okay.
Variable. Now because all of this code is inside a script, it will run as soon as the game starts. So in the game, you will see an instance being created after 1 second, and nothing happens after that because by default, a time source only runs once. You can change that by adding another argument here, which is the total number of times you want your time source to run, or set it to -1 to make it repeat forever. That's what I will do here and then run the game. And now you will see that every 1 second a new instance is created, and this will keep happening until you manually pause or stop your time source, which you can do with these functions. Read the GameMaker manual for information on all of the functions you can use with time sources, play around and experiment with them.
Hmm. All right, so what we're gonna do, create some more variables in here. So, no, not, oops. What have I got direction set up here? Ah, okay, base. Right. Take all this. Actually, hold on. All of that. Wait. Okay. Attack speed. What if I change that to 1 for a sec? What happens? Every second. Weapon fire rate. 20%. The attack speed bonus that's supposed to be. That's going to be say 0.2. Yeah, that's right. Then the OBJ player. No, it's not there. It's apply current upgrade to player now. We've moved that. Minus that. Minus that. See how that goes. So about 2. I think that worked. Yeah, look at that. Let's get another upgrade and see what happens. Yeah, it's definitely working now. Okay. So Come back to OBJ player. We'll take that down to there. OBJ enemy 2. Step here. Let me just take that. Hmm. We don't need to do the 2 different things for that. I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to go enemy weapon 1. Group weapons. Okay. Where are we? Why have we moved all the way up there? Get 1 to 1. Now, we only want this if the player's in range as well. So this all needs to move up in here. Need to grab all that. Pull it out of that so I can delete that. Cooldown is less or equal to 0. What do we want? What did we call it here? Player direction. Feel like that should work. Hmm. Ah, okay. Yeah. I need to get rid of those runs. Ah, they're shooting. They're shooting. Yes. Yes, I got enemies firing weapons at me. Woohoo! All right. Okay. Now. Okay, so now we need to create new object, OBJ, enemy weapon collision. Where's our player weapon collision? No. Yeah, player weapon collision. All right, so enemy collision with player weapon collision. And then we're going to want player collision, enemy weapon collision. All right, so OBJ player collision with enemy weapon collision. All right. All right. Enemy collision. Yes, I think. Tony, you doing damage? I think it is. All right. Cool. So we've got an enemy firing at us now. All right. There's one last thing I want to do tonight. What I'm going to need to do. Opening up our old one. Because there's something that I'd implemented in there that I want to re-implement. Where did I have it? It is in the player. I guess it's not though. Room physics, no. Room settings. Following. I don't know why that's not working. Hmm. Come on. Yeah, so it's got like a... wraparound room. Okay. Is that in the other one? Yeah, there is. All right, so this should go up to the bottom then from when we hit the top of the map. Okay, yes. But that's not exactly how I want it to react. I need to give those enemy bullets an outside room as well. Oh, they've got one. Outside room destroy instance. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, this one's going to take a little bit more work, I think. Okay, so it's not... All right. So by the looks of what we've got to do... So let's say... might need to do this. How do I do... Solid fill. Okay, so let's say... No. Solid outline, solid fill. All right. So if we've got... Oops. All right, so say if we've got this, and then it's gonna basically copy and paste them around like this, but these ones aren't actually there as part of the map. So technically, we go back to no fill. Technically, we're only in this area still. That's our room. And then so if our ship starts to come up here, let's say our viewport, our camera will see that, but the ship itself, once it hits here, whoops, what's going on? So there's our viewport. And then, so once our ship hits there, it'll pop back out over here. And then our viewport will shift over here. So it still looks like it goes on forever, but it doesn't actually. That one's going to take a little time to implement though, so I think I might leave that. But in the meantime, we've got a lot done now. So in this week, we've gotten the upgrade system implemented. We've got all our upgrades working. And we've got now another enemy added in that can shoot us. We've started adding different like AI behavior for the AI, different behaviors for the enemies. And then we can start adding in like just building upon things. So, but yeah, this week, first thing I'm going to do is work on the wraparound. So basically when we get, hold on, let's get down here. Ah! Gone too far. So basically, if we get to the edge, instead of it getting close to the camera like that, and then jumping up to the top, the camera will stay centered and it will look like it still does. It will still technically jump, but it's going to be at the other end of the room then. So in the meantime, we'll be back on Sunday night, 7:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time for our normal end of week wind down, chill, back into Hollow Knight Silksong again. And then we'll be back next week for our next dev update and live development. So you've been watching 0xp Studio. I'm 0xp Dev. Until then, have a great night. Stay safe.